Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome once again to our virtual classroom. Today we are going to be going over lesson 14-3. This is our 31st lesson. As always, I do recommend that you pause this video and that you copy down the heading, maybe even copy down all the notes, but then follow along with me as I do this. So again, pause the video and then continue once you are ready to continue. All right, so let's begin. Today, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be going over how to solve division equations. How to solve division equations. We are going to be doing all of these problems, 1, 2, 3, 4, 8, and 10 here in the video. And so I definitely recommend that you stick around. But anyways, let's get started. So remember, whenever we are solving equations, we need to ask ourselves, what is our goal? What is it that we're always trying to accomplish? And that is to isolate the variable. We want the variable to be all by itself. Whether it finds itself on the left side or the right side of the equation, we want that variable to be by itself, not surrounded by any numbers, not by addition, subtraction, multiplication, or division. We just want the variable by itself. Now, today, since we're working with division equations, we're going to use the opposite of division to isolate the variable. So we're going to be using multiplication. Remember that multiplication and division are two sides of the same coin. To get rid of multiplication, we divide. To get rid of division, we multiply. All right. So with that in mind, let's jump straight into our textbook. All right. And so obviously I'm getting these problems straight from OneNote. And so let me open that up for us. So if you go to the second 9 weeks work tab, scroll down to the newest section, which is 14-3. And let me reload my page. Some technical difficulties this morning for me. All right, there we go. Awesome. All right, we're going to begin with number 8. So this is exactly where I got these examples from. So let's begin with number 8. Again, this is one of your homework problems, so I definitely recommend that you pay close attention to it. All right, so here we have x over 2, or x divided by 2 is equal to 5. Please remember that whenever we are dealing with fractions, that fraction symbol oftentimes means division, right? So here we have x divided by 12 is equal to 5. Now remember, our goal is to isolate the variable. We want this x to be all by itself. We don't want anything else around it. However, in this case, it is not isolated. It is not by itself. Why not? Because right now we are dividing it by 12. We don't want that division to be there. So let's remember that the opposite of dividing x by 12 is to multiply it by 12. So in order to get rid of this division by 12, I'm going to, instead of divide the x by 12, I'm going to multiply x by 12. Right? I'm not multiplying 12 by 12. No, in fact, this is not really a 12. This is really a 1 over 12. But regardless, I'm multiplying the x by 12. Right? And whatever I do to one side, I must do to the other side as well. So I have to multiply the 5 by 12 as well. All right. Now, if I divide something by 12 and then multiply it by 12, it cancels out. You can also think about it. Some of you guys will remember that that when we have a fraction, all right, so here I'm multiplying 12 times x, and then I have a 12 in the denominator. Remember that whenever you have the same number both in the numerator and denominator, they basically cancel out. 12 divided by 12 is 1, and 1 times x is just x, right? And so what I have left over is that x will equal whatever 5 times 12 is. So x will equal to 60. Let me do that again. So without overcomplicating everything that I just said, remember, we are currently dividing x by 12. All right, in order to isolate this variable, I need to do the opposite of what I'm doing to it right now. So the opposite of dividing by 12 is to multiply by 12. So I'm going to multiply the x by 12. However, whatever I do to one side, I'm going to do to the other. All right. I have a 12 up here and the 12 on the bottom. So 12 divided by 12 is 1. So that cancels out, thus leaving the x isolated. Then 5 times 12 is 60. And that is it. Pretty simple. Let's try the next one. The next one is 8b. 8b, again, straight from our textbook. Here we have 16 is equal to a divided by 3/10, 0.3. All right, notice that my variable is now on the right side of the equation, but that is fine. Okay, I want the variable to be by itself. I want it to be isolated on this side. So I am currently dividing by 3/10. The opposite of dividing by 3/10 is to multiply a by 3/10. So I'm going to multiply by 3/10. But whatever I do to one side, I must also do to the other. And that's what I'm showing down here. All right. So 3/10 divided by 3/10, that's 1, right? So that cancels out, leaving us with the a isolated. And then 16 times 3/10 is 4.8. If you don't believe me, you can work it out on the side. 0.3 or 0.3, it's the same thing. 3 times 6 is 18. 3 times 1 is 3, plus 1 is 4. We have one decimal place. That would give me 4.8. Remember that you can always check these problems by putting that variable back into the equation. Do 4.8 divided by 0.3. All right, so 4.8 divided into 0.3. Remember, we don't like decimals on the outside, so move it over once. I have to move the decimal on the inside as well once. So it's going to be 3 into 48. So 3 goes into 4 once, and 3 goes into 18 exactly 6 times. I get 16. That is what I started with. It works out. Excellent. So as you can see, this is pretty simple. This is pretty simple. I do recommend that you pause, rewind, watch this again as we get ready to jump into the rest of the assignment. So let's go ahead and work on number 10. And for that, I'm going to go into our textbook. Let's go down to number 10. We're going to solve each of these equations. All right, so for number 10, we have x. I'm just going to rewrite this on the side. So this is 10a. X over 3 is equal to 26. Remember, I want to isolate my x. I want to isolate this variable right here. The opposite of dividing by 3 is to multiply by 3. All right, so I'm going to multiply the x by 3. And I'm going to do the same thing to the other side. Whatever you do to one side, you must do to the other. So the 3's will cancel out, leaving the x isolated. And then 26 times 3, I'm going to work that off right here. 26 times 3. 3 times 6 is 18. 3 times 2 is 6, plus 1 is 7. Therefore, my answer is 78. X is 78. All right. If we check it, we could do 78 instead of the x, divided by 3, and see if that's equal to 26. So let's do 78 divided by 3. Again, I am just checking it. 3 goes into 7 twice. That's going to be 6. Remainder 1, bring down the 8. And 3 goes into 18 6 times exactly. Ladies and gentlemen, the answer is that x is equal to 78. Very good. Let's do the next one. Next, we have 10b. And in 10b, 14 is equal to a over 9.6. 9.6. Okay, in this scenario, ladies and gentlemen, I want to isolate the a here on the right side of the equation. The opposite of dividing by 9.6 is to multiply the a by 9.6. However, whatever I do to one side, I must do to the other. So I have to multiply the 14 by 9.6 as well, right? 9.6 divided by 9.6, that cancels. That's just a 1. leaving the A isolated. Now I have to do 14 times 9.6. 6 times 4 is 24. 6 times 1 is 6 plus 2 is 8. 9 times 4 is 36. 9 times 1 is 9 plus 3 is 12. Let's add this together. We get 4, 14, 3, and 1, which, and then we have one decimal place. So my answer is going to be 134 and 4 tenths. 134 and 4 tenths. Let me just double check that really quick. I know I was moving a little fast, and so I just want to make sure that my math was correct. So if we do 14 times 9.6, 134.4, it is correct, ladies and gentlemen. If you don't have a calculator to check your work, which you can, as long as you show me your work, I don't mind if you check it with a calculator. That's fine, as long as you show me. If you did something wrong, go back and change your math. So that is number 10B. All right. Let's go up to number 1. Remember, we are doing numbers 1 through 4 as well. So why don't we just do these together? And that's the gist of the lesson. These are just the actual problems that we're going to do for practice. All right, so number 1 reads, Emil was dividing his candy. Emil was dividing his candy among 15 friends and himself. So that's 16 people, by the way, because we have 15 friends and himself. All right, so that's where I got the 16 from. If each person, so each one person is going to receive 4 pieces, how many pieces of candy did Emil have to start with? All right. We know that each person is going to end up with 4 pieces of candy, correct? So I'm going to make my whole equation equal to 4 because that's how many pieces each person is going to end up with, right? We don't know how many pieces they're going to start with. That is our variable. We don't know how many pieces of candy he started with, but we know that we are going to divide all those pieces among the 16 people. That is my equation. So for number 1, in fact, if you go to Schoology and you look at number 1, let me show you what that looks like, because I know it's a tad bit confusing as it was last time as well. So if we go to Schoology, go to today's folder, today being Wednesday. Notice how on number 1, you have 3 blanks, okay? So let's make sure that we write the equation correctly. So here, we would want it to be x divided by the 16 is equal to 4, right? And so in blank 1 would be x, blank 2 would be 16, and blank 3 would be 4. So x, 16, and 4, and then blank 4 is going to be the actual solution. You're going to do the same thing for question 2, 3, and 4 as well. All right, so that's why it's important to have that equation. All right, so let's go back to the problem. So let's continue. So again, let's isolate the variable. We want the x to be isolated. Is it isolated here on the left side? It is not, because we are dividing x by 16. Now to isolate it, let's do the opposite of division. So the opposite of division, the opposite of dividing by 16 is to multiply the x by 16. However, whatever I do to one side, I must do to the other. 16 and then divided by 16, that's going to be 1, which isolates the x, because 1 times x is just x. And then 4 times 16 is 64. So x would have to equal 64. How do I check this? Well, instead of an x, I can use 64. So I can do 64 divided by 16 and see if that gives me 4. If it does, you did it correctly, which it does. Let's continue. Number 2, a candy bar costs 89 cents. That's what I'm going to end up with. All right, so it costs 89 cents. Might as well write it already. So it's going to give me a cost per candy bar of 89 cents. How much would it cost to buy 24 candy bars? So we need to know the cost for 24 candy bars. There's my equation. That's what you would write. And one of the reasons why I'm giving it to you again is because I want us to practice solving the equation, not so much coming up with the equation, at least not yet. All right, so again, my goal is to isolate this variable. I want the x to be by itself. All right, is it by itself? No, because I am currently dividing by 24. How do I get rid of dividing by 24? We do the opposite. Instead of dividing by 24, I'm going to multiply the x by 24. All right. Now, whatever I do to one side, I must do to the other. So I need to multiply whatever's on this other side by 24 as well. Divided by 24, multiply by 24, that's going to cancel itself out because they're opposites. X will be whatever 89 or 89 hundredths times 24 is. So let's go ahead and do that. 24 times 0.89. You don't need the 0 right there. 9 times 4 is 36. 9 times 2 is 18 plus 3, 19, 20, 21. We're done with this. 8 times 4 is 32. 8 times 2 is 16. Plus 3 is 19. Let's add this together. 6, 3, 11, and 2. We have 2 decimal places, so I'm going to go 1, 2. My answer would be $21.36. There we go. For the sake of time, let's just move on. Number 3. The cost of a ski trip is to be divided equally. Hey, that's a huge word. A huge hint. Divided equally among 16 members of the ski club. Each member will pay $250. What is the total cost? So whatever the total cost is, which we don't know what that is to be divided equally among 16 people. So whatever the total cost is, we're going to divide that equally by 16. And that's going to give us the cost for each person, $250, which isn't too bad for a ski trip. All right, again, let us isolate the variable. It's here on the left side again. So the opposite of dividing by 16 is to multiply by 16, right? Whatever I do to one side, I must do to the other. All right, 16 divided by 16, they cancel out. X will equal to whatever 250 times 16 is. 6 times 0 is 0, 6 times 5 is 30, 6 times 2 is 12, plus 3 is 15. 1 times 0 is 0, 1 times 5 is 5. Oh, sorry, we need to add the 0, and then 1 times 0 is 0, 1 times 5 is 5, and 1 times 2 is 2. Now we add everything together. 0, 0, 10, 4. So the cost of the trip would be $4,000. If you want to check it, you can do 4,000 divided by 16 and see if that gives you 250, which it should. All right, this is the last one. A punch recipe makes 24 servings of 6 ounces each. Of 6 ounces each. There you go. How many total ounces of punch does the recipe make? So we don't know the total ounces. That's going to be my variable. We don't know the total ounces. But we know that if we divide it by the number of servings, that's going to tell me, well, sorry, the number of servings is 24. If I divide it by the number of servings, it's going to tell me the number of ounces per serving. All right. Again, not always easy to come up with the equation, but now that we have it, it should be easy to solve it, right? Again, let us isolate the variable. Let us isolate the x. The opposite of dividing x by 24 is to multiply x by 24. And whatever I do to one side, I must do to the other. All right? Multiply 24, divide 24, they're opposites. Or 24 over 24, that's 1. 1 times x is x, and then 6 times 24 should give us, well, let's multiply it out. 24 times 6, 6 times 4 is 24, 6 times 2 is 12, plus 2 is 14, it will give us 144. And that is my answer. All right, ladies and gentlemen, if I was going too fast, I do recommend you go back, you rewatch whatever part you missed of the video, especially the first part with all the notes. Should be pretty simple. Remember, we're always trying to isolate the variable. The opposite of dividing x by something is to multiply x by that something. So that will cancel out, and then just do the same thing to the other side. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I will see you during the next class period, and hopefully you guys will have done the assignment, turned it in, and also uploaded a picture to OneNote. Okay, see you soon.